fund the attempted takeover of the U.S. government? John Noël from Greenpeace has a story linking big oil to fascism. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. It's a senior climate campaigner with Greenpeace USA. Greenpeace.org is the website. His Twitter handle, by the way, is Noel, Noel _Johnny, or Greenpeace USA. And John, welcome to the program. Millions. I see one politician here, Ted Cruz, getting over $3.5 million from the oil and gas industry. Tell me about how oil and gas corporations funded this attempted takedown of the United States government.
Yeah, Tom, thanks for having me, and happy Friday. Watching the Capitol attack go down, we know that this type of violence doesn't happen in a vacuum. Right? These politicians, the 147 insurrectionists and the 7 senators, require corporate funding to maintain power and influence. And immediately, we knew that the oil and gas industry likely had a role to play. Right? So our analysis was a quick scrape of publicly available data that showed, yes, indeed, the oil and gas industry donated $5.4 million to the 7 senators. And Ted Cruz was one of the top recipients of oil and gas funding. And specifically, he has a long-running relationship with ExxonMobil. They have donated over $100,000 to him directly over his career. But that's no secret that the oil and gas industry is wrapped up in the extreme right wing, right? They have profited off of the ascendancy of the right wing. It's been a symbiotic relationship up to now. But now they're trying to distance themselves from the insurrectionists and kind of the violence that unfolded that probably would not have unfolded if it were not for corporate America largely supporting these politicians. Right. And we don't think there's anything that the oil and gas industry could do right now to actually distance themselves from these politicians who vote in lockstep with fossil fuel priorities every time, for the most part, especially if you look at Ted Cruz.
So David Sirota has been writing about how and Judd Legum as well, about how there's all these corporations who are coming out and issuing corporate press releases and whatnot saying, we've decided to suspend our political donations because the nation's in a crisis and stuff like that. But in fact, what's going on is in the background, that's with PACs, political action committees, but with super PACs that don't report where their donations come from, it appears that they're continuing to fund many of these people. What have your investigations found in that regard, or in other ways that this money is leaking out? And how long? And if it does look like they're actually withholding their contributions for a while, how long will it be before they're back to their old tricks of funding climate denialists in the United States Senate and the House of Representatives?
Well, it's not that big of a statement to pause donations to these candidates because we just got out of the election cycle, right? We're in a totally new political environment where there are people won't be investing in candidates for another 10 months or something, right? So it's really not that bold of a statement to say you're pausing donations because there's really no one to give to right now, right? So we need to, if these corporations are serious, we need to have them say, we will not donate to the 147 insurrectionists for the length of their career. The super PACs are a whole other issue. We believe that, just because we have no idea who is donating to those entities, it's really hard to track, but we do not predict that they will stop operating in the same ways they have before. Because the fact of the matter is, oil and gas and the extractive industry writ large is tied up with the success of Republicans, right? And that includes the extremist element of the political party, right? Which is hard to separate out from, kind of the various, very serious people who are now trying to distance themselves. But the reality is, the right wing and the extremist elements turns out to be a core part of the actual party, right?
Well, now there's two things that have kept the oil and gas industry and the billionaires that it has created wealthy over the last couple of decades in particular. One is the annual $600 billion subsidy that the federal government provides in a whole variety of ways to the oil and gas industry. The second is this group of climate denial organizations that have been funded for years and years and years by both the fossil fuel industry and some of the fossil fuel billionaires. And they have a vested interest in, number one, keeping that $600 billion a year in subsidies flowing to them. And I'm guessing that's where Ted Cruz and his buddies, his Republican buddies, come in. And number two, in keeping the climate denialism going, which again is where Ted Cruz and his Republican buddies come in. So, I mean, it seems to me that if they were to stop funding these people and just get out of politics altogether, that you'd get some rational politicians in there who would acknowledge that the United States is in a climate crisis right now with wildfires and floods and tornadoes and hurricanes and God only knows what else, directos, that they would acknowledge that, and that would be the point at which we start doing carbon taxes and we stop, giving hundreds of billions of dollars a year in subsidies, to the fossil fuel industry. So what else can they do?
Right, and I think that's a great point. So the movement is really leaning into this idea that you're seeing in the news is if we can have healing from this process, right, from what happened last week at the Capitol attack, but we can only have healing through accountability, right? And it's not just accountability for the white supremacist mob and the politicos that fueled that white supremacist mob, but it's also for the oil and gas companies that have funded these politicians, right? So the healing process through accountability is an opportunity for the Biden administration to come in day one and with executive orders get rid of a lot of those fossil fuel subsidies that you mentioned. And it also gives a mandate to Congress to get rid of fossil fuel subsidies to raise revenue, right? So we can spend that money and invest in our communities who are on the front line of the climate crisis. So it really is a moment to have accountability and specifically to go after these fossil fuel subsidies, which are a total joke if we're trying to address the crisis in 2021.
Yeah, it just blows my mind. Joe Biden is asking for $50 billion to help fund a program to vaccinate everybody in the United States and thus get the economy running again and save lives, by the way. $50 billion. The fossil fuel industry is getting $600 billion a year, and every year Republicans, oh yeah, put that in the budget, no problem. Yes, we're going to salute that, but $50 billion to vaccinate Americans. Oh my God, what about the budget deficit? We can't deal with this. We're going to have horrible inflation. You got to run the country like a family, You can't afford it. It's nuts. It's just nuts. Is it your sense, John Noel, with the senior climate campaigner with Greenpeace USA, is it your sense that Americans are waking the hell up to what's going on?
I mean, I work on Capitol Hill. I've walked those same halls. I know a lot of the Capitol Hill staff up there. And the political situation at the national level in this country is at an all-time level of dysfunction that, like, a lot of people have never seen before. It is really, really dysfunctional and, frankly, scary at this current moment. And I think you'd have to, not be watching or reading anything to not be waking up to, how this country is run and who are the forces.
Which means this is an opportunity for change, right?
Yeah, no, it is ripe for change. And specifically on oil and gas subsidies, a lot of candidates like to talk about getting rid of subsidies. But who's actually... Yeah,
I'm with you. John Noel, a senior climate campaigner with Greenpeace USA. Greenpeace.org is the website. Noel _Johnny is the Twitter handle, or Greenpeace at Greenpeace USA. John, thanks so much for dropping by. Good talking with you.
All right, Tom. See you next time.
Yeah.